Okay, so again, this is Retiring Well with Your Partner. My name is Jonathan Liu, and let's get started. First thing I want to go over is just I do like it to be interactive, like I said. If you do want to share, for everybody else, I do ask that you don't share anything that people have talked about outside of this presentation, outside of this group, just to maintain some confidentiality and trust that people can share things and get advice on things and not have that be told to other people. Because inevitably, maybe some people know other people in the group or whatnot. But let's try to keep some confidentiality in this group. So, goals of today is to understand that transition into retirement, some of the issues that can come out of that, learn some strategies on how to have a successful retirement transition, and ways to identify mainly about the relationship. How do you maintain a positive relationship? How do you deal with the issues that may come up in retirement? So let's start with the challenges and healthy habits in retirement that we can start off with. And so when I think about retirement, like obviously I'm not retired because I'm doing this and I'm here. But when I think about that, when I've talked to people in session and the retirees that have come to me, I like to think about this question as a guiding principle for retirement, sort of what matters most in this part of life. Because the answer to this question is going to give you direction for your energy, your time, and your resources. And like this last part of your life, working, taking care of family and whatnot, those that had a clear goals to it. And this next part may not. So some things to think about. Do you want to prioritize doing things you haven't been able to? Is spending time with family important? Is seeing the world important? Does legacy matter? What do you want people to say about you when you're gone? These are the kind of things that we don't usually think about a lot. And it's easier just to go on with habit, with routine, but these are worth putting some time into. And so, I mean, a lot of those questions are also on hold because you're so busy with other parts of your life. And when we think about work, why is this transition so big? It's because work gives us an identity. It gives us a sense of achievement and satisfaction. We have interactions with people and we go places, we see different things. It gives us a sense of purpose and it adds some personal value. So sometimes when people retire, you end up losing a lot of these things. You get that loss of identity. You don't have as much satisfaction in your life. There's no sense of achievement, especially with a job in carpentry where you can have, or if you have other jobs outside of that, there's a lot of, you have tasks that you complete, and then you have this sense of, I'm getting better, I see the fruit of my labor, that kind of thing. But when you retire, there really isn't that structure anymore holding us there. And so you might have increased boredom, loss of personal value, and then you sort of question like, well, what now? So what do we do with that? I think some of this is to add some structure, try to add things in your life that would mimic a job. If you want to get a job, there's nothing that says you can't. Learning new skills gets that sense of achievement, gets that sense of progress. Staying healthy. If you want to enjoy your retirement, you want to make sure you're taking care of yourself, exercising, going to doctor's appointments, eating right. And just to plug the clinics, we here at the Lisle campus have two great providers. we have chiropractic and PT, and I'm here, right? So this is an easy way to be able to hit some of that staying healthy and at no cost to you. Now could also be a time, now could also be a time to focus on social connections, reconnect with old friends, maybe meet new people, because a lot of work has a lot of informal interaction. You talk about your day, you talk about your weekend, and you may not necessarily hang out with these people a lot, but you see them every day, or you see them during a job and then you don't see them again for some time, So some of this time in retirement can be, you can reestablish some of those friendships, be a little bit more intentional with them. And then how do you find a clear sense of purpose? I think volunteering is a wonderful way to give back, to find some kind of way of contributing to society, to people around you, to your neighbors, things like that. I mean, everyone here probably has a lot of very specific, very specialized and knowledge that not a lot of people know, and a lot of experience that a lot of people don't have. So trying to use that in a way to be able to gain some purpose for yourself can be very helpful. So what are some examples of that? We've got volunteering and travel. It's called like volunteerism.
I don't know why
You can help with something in a different country and also travel at the same time. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Habitat for Humanity. I don't know how they are as an organization, but it seems like some way you could give back. AARP has a lot of different things that you can volunteer or donate your time to. They're all listed here. Think about a food pantry, tutoring. If you like the outdoors, becoming a volunteer ranger at a forest preserve, hospice, respite for caregivers. If you've ever taken care of an aging parent, you know how important that kind of respite time is for the caregiver. Meals on Wheels. My mom actually does Meals on Wheels. She loves talking to people and getting to see people and how they're doing. And then if you ever heard of AmeriCorps is a lot of college kids when they graduate, or young adults will do it outside when they graduate to don't like use a year or two to give back. And there's AmeriCorps for seniors. So these are just some lists of things. I don't know if there are people who have already retired, have some thoughts. You guys can come off of mute, and what are things you guys are doing to help fill the time, find purpose? If you feel like going with AARP, I talked to somebody recently, her name is Ellen, and you can jot down her information or take a picture of this, but she is willing to, she told me to give everyone her cell phone number. And if you're interested, she will walk you through all their options in the state of Illinois and sort of find where you can fit in. So give her a call. Any questions on this part? We're going to move into relationships from here. I'm going to take a look at the chat. Feel free to type. Feel free to come off of mute if you'd like. Okay, so let's move on to relationships. With all of those changes that we talked about, with what you get from work, what you're losing when you go into retirement per se, and like trying to find something, it's going to have effect on some of your relationships. Primarily, we're talking about the romantic relationship, your partner, your spouse, those kinds of things. And so what changes when you retire is you don't really have the distraction of a job anymore. You've got, you spend a significant amount of time together as compared to before. And so in that is like a change of balance of what gets done at home, who takes care of what. Things I've heard from people is that when they retire and their husband or partner comes home and they're not used to them being home, that they're like, I used to clean and I do all these things a certain way, and now they have an opinion of how everything should be done because they're usually not here when I'm doing all those things. And right, there's some conflict, there's some space for conflict there. I think we ask ourselves inherently in retirement, well, who am I now? I don't have my job anymore to give me that identity. And then we also spend more time with our significant other. And then it brings, who is this person I'm with? Because inevitably we as people are always changing. And so we can't expect other people not to change either. So sometimes if work has consumed most of our life, then sometimes we might not know who this person we're with because they seem a little different than when we first met. And then ultimately trying to figure out, how do we fit together in this part of life? Sorry, just looking at the chat. Can we get a link to this recording sent to our emails? Possibly. I don't know what we're going to do with this afterwards. I'll talk to the health center manager and see what they want to do with it. But hopefully we can. I will also send out a PDF version of this presentation so that everyone will have that as well. So you can go back and look at these things later, because you might not want to listen to me for another hour again. So I want to use this tool. It's called the Sound Relationship House. It was developed by Doctors Julie and John Gottman of the Gottman Institute. If you've ever heard of them before, they do a lot of research into relationships. They are both they're both researchers. One is a therapist and one is more of a researcher, so they sort of balance each other out that way. And so after studying thousands of marriages and relationships, they sort of developed this blueprint for what a sound relationship looks like. And so the walls, the framing of a relationship, I would say we could break it down into these two things: trust and commitment. Because if we don't have either of those, then it makes the rest of the relationship hard to support. Think of this, we're going to go up in floors. The first floor is going to be, you have to build love maps. We're going to go into these in detail afterwards. I'm going to sort of breeze through what all these are. The next one is share fondness and admiration. We've got turning towards instead of away, positive perspective, managing conflict, make life dreams come true, and then create shared meaning. There's going to be a lot of information that's going to come at you for when we go through this whole thing. And then I would say feel free at any point, if you want to ask questions, if you've got something you want to get some thoughts on, feel free to come off mute and we can discuss it given the time, or maybe it might be something better to schedule with me so we can talk privately about it. So let's start with the frame, the trust and the commitment. So trust, being, and commitment, these are like the weight-bearing walls of the house. And so without it, the house isn't going to stand. Trust is the sense you get from repeated acts of commitment. And the commitment are the actions that let you know, or let your partner know, that when you make decisions, you think about them, or that you trust that they have your best interest at heart, right? So you can see without trust, without commitment, you can't really have a sound relationship, because then what's going on in this relationship so that you don't trust and you don't think the other person is committed? Some examples of showing some commitment. So supporting through illness, difficult time, that really builds trust, that really shows someone's committed. Sacrificing personal needs for another person, that's commitment. And if you feel like maybe that your relationship lacks some of this trust and lacks some of this commitment, I would say let's follow this acronym, ATTUNE, to help build some of that. Awareness, I would say, is the awareness of their needs, awareness of them as a person. Turning towards, we'll get to that a little bit later, but what that really means is we make bids for connection, and you want to turn towards a person when they want, for lack of a better term, attention. Tolerance, as we grow older, as we mature, as we go through life, we change. And so tolerance is key because it's being able to say, it's okay that you're changing. I'm still here. I still accept you. I still love you. I still care for you. Understanding the things that they struggle with, maybe understanding the things that they like, their way of thinking. Being non-defensive in the way we respond to them can really help build some of that trust. Defensiveness, as we will talk later, is can be a real relationship like downer. And empathy, I would describe empathy as being able to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. Any questions so far? Just the frames of the house supporting everything else. Building love maps is the first floor. So knowing our partner's inner and outer world and what that means to them, that's what I mean by building love maps. Like, do you know these things about them? Do you know their friends, their favorite food, what their worst fear is, what they like, what they don't like, where you like to go out to eat, what movies, those kinds of things. Because this is sort of what builds that friendship, that you know things about each other. Does that mean you have to have them in common? Not necessarily. The second floor is share fondness and admiration. And do you find yourself criticizing them often? Are you telling them what they're doing wrong? Right? Some of these things are these kinds of criticisms, focusing on negatives, they can chip away at the fondness and admiration that maybe you have in the relationship. And so with what Gottman and their team have found is that when there's a negative emotional interaction, it needs to be balanced out by they give 5 positive feelings or interactions to counteract it. So it's a 1 to 5. If you find that you have a lot more negative interactions than positive, then that's when things maybe need to be course corrected a little bit. And so how do you share fondness and admiration? Giving them compliments, catch your partner doing something right, thanking them for that, sharing fun or favorite memories from the past, reminiscing, telling them how proud you are of them, being able to feel appreciated. So expressing what are you thankful for them. And if they're more of like a gift person, being able to surprise them with something special. Doesn't have to be anything big, can be something small or just a date or a note or these kinds of things, right? That shows that there is I'm thinking about you. I care about you. I see you. I know what you're doing. And I know this is hard, those kinds of things. Third floor, turn towards instead of away. So we talked a bit about this before, and I alluded to it. And what this is we always make bids for connection, right? We're looking for ways to connect with somebody, to get some attention. And so what I like to think about is like kids. Kids, asking their parents to play, kids saying, look what I can do. Can you watch me? Right? That's a kid's version. That's the kid version of this. They want your attention, and they're not shy to like go after that. And so for the adult version, it's when you're with your partner and your significant other asking, how was your day? And if the response like a fine, right, that's not really engaging with that connection. Well, tell me about this. Well, it was okay, right? So as you see that like back and forth, the person asking the question is really trying to get the other person to connect with them. And so, I mean, how many times have you heard the phrase, are you listening to me right now? Like, did you hear what I said? And then the other answer is usually, what? Huh? Like putting down the phone and being like, well, so that was a missed connection, right? Or that's a sign that someone else is trying to connect with you. And whatever you're doing, maybe we should put that down and connect with them. And so turning towards means, yeah, like putting whatever we're doing down. So here are some examples. A lot of the times, bids for connections is there's what is said, and then there's the subtext. That subtext is the heart of the communication, sort of what they're saying is implying. You could say this is like, well, does this mean I have to mind read? It's like, yes and no. I mean, we ask things of people all the time, and we have our own reason why we're doing it. So some of it's trying to read between the lines, needing to know our partner a little bit about why they would like to do some of the things. So like, let's go to the ice skating class is like, let's do something new together. Join me in doing something. Coming home from work and saying something like, I'm so tired when I get home from work. I just want to like sit and watch TV. That's like, I'm really stressed. I need to de-stress. It could also be a request, help me de-stress. I need to do something so I'm not so stressed out right now. Can you put the phone down? Talk to me. I feel like I'm being ignored. You're not listening to me. I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to connect, right? That's the subtext to that. And you know what? We are all guilty of doing this. I do this myself, and it's the phone these days is not, the internet is not our friend in this area. I mean, if you have kids, if you have teenagers especially, this is very apparent. So let's watch this video. This is put out by the Gottman Institute, and it just sort of goes over what I was talking about. Whoops. I don't know. Can anyone hear that? I want to make sure people can hear that. I think I might have not shared my sound. Can anyone give me like a chat, put it in the chat, like I can hear this?
Cannot hear it.
Okay, that's what I thought. You know what? I think I might have to stop sharing and share this again. There we go. All right, let's try.
Daily Crossroads.
Let's reload this.
Imagine you hear your partner let out an
Can you hear it
exasperated
now?
sigh. In that fleeting moment, you have a choice.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Keep going about your day or ask what's on their mind. These small, daily crossroads may seem insignificant, but the choices you make while interacting with your partner could, over time, make or break your relationship. The sigh is what relationship researchers Drs. John and Julie Gottman would call a bid for connection. Bids can be small or big, verbal or nonverbal. We can choose to turn towards our partner in these moments and accept their bids, or turn away from them and ignore their bids. The Gottmans have spent the last 4 decades studying thousands of couples to answer the question, what separates the relationship masters from the relationship disasters? They found a critical difference in how each type of couple responds to bids for connection. In these moments, masters turn towards each other 86% of the time. Disasters turn towards each other only 33% of the time. A tendency to turn towards your partner forms the basis of trust, emotional connection, passion, and a satisfying sex life. When couples break up, it's usually not because of big issues like conflict or infidelity. More often, it's a result of the resentment and distance that build up over time when partners continually turn away from bids for connection. So take a page from the Relationship Masters Playbook. Notice when your partner makes a bid. Show interest. Ask questions. Nod. Listen, and put away your screens. Choose to turn towards your partner.
Okay.
Imagine you.
Any thoughts on that? No thoughts. Let's continue. The 4th floor, positive perspective. So these are the previous 3: building love maps, share fondness, admiration, and turn towards instead of away. Right? That's the bids for connection. And so when you don't have these 3, if these 3 floors are pretty weak in the relationship, it leads to something they call negative sentiment override, or basically a negative point of view. You perceive the neutral or maybe positive actions of your partner, and you start seeing it through a negative lens. And the only reason why you've started to do that is because you feel like there's no fondness and admiration. They tend to ignore you, or you feel like they don't know you, that kind of thing, right? So some of all these things sort of build on each other. The opposite would be positive sentiment override. And that's sort of letting go of that negativity and being able to accept influence from them. This is one of their terms. But what it's just being able to say is being able to share power with your partner, making decisions together, treating them with respect. Accepting influence can be another way of saying being able to accept their point of view. If they have an opinion about you, about the way things are going, how to do something, being able to see it as more of like, you're my equal as opposed to I'm better than you. So this leads to, actually it was positive. Yeah, that was 4. Okay. The next floor, managing conflict. You can't really get to managing conflict if you don't have the other floors below it, because a lot of, negative ways of conflict can show there's a reason why the conflict is so intense, and it's because a lot of those other floors aren't there. And so here's another video we'll watch about their concept of conflict management.
You're so selfish.
Ugh, what an idiot.
It's not my fault we're always late.
Forget it.
Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Dr. John Gottman calls these negative communication patterns the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse because they'll lead to the end of your relationship. In fact, he can predict this relationship failure with over 90% accuracy if the behavior isn't changed. So, what can you do? Well, At the Gottman Institute, we understand you might not even know you're communicating this way, or you might not know how to control it. But if you practice the following 4 research-based antidotes, there is hope for your future. Criticism attacks the character of the recipient instead of focusing on a specific behavior. The antidote to criticism is to talk about your feelings using I statements, then express a positive need. Contempt is an expression of superiority that comes out as sarcasm, cynicism, name-calling, eye-rolling, sneering, mockery, and hostile humor. Contempt is the greatest predictor of relationship failure and must be eliminated. The antidote to contempt is to treat one another with respect and build a culture of appreciation within the relationship. Defensiveness is self-protection through righteous indignation or playing the victim. Defensiveness never solves the problem and is really just an underhanded way of blaming your partner. The antidote to defensiveness is to accept responsibility, even if only for part of the conflict. Stonewalling occurs when the listener withdraws from the conversation without resolving anything. It takes time for the negativity created by the first 3 horsemen to result in stonewalling, but when it does, it can become a habit. The antidote to stonewalling is to break for at least 20 minutes, calm down, then return to the conversation. Spare your relationship from certain destruction. Learn more about eliminating the 4 horsemen by visiting our site.
Now I'm sort of realizing that this sort of seems like a advertisement for the Gottman Institute, but that's not what I'm trying to do. They put out some good stuff that's really helpful to think about. So, and some of this, when I was putting this presentation together, I was like, man, this really feels like you're drinking from a fire hose. There's like so much information in this. So if there's any questions you guys have, you can always ask or email. When I send out the PDF, you'll have my email. If you want to talk or anything like that, we can. So let me these next 2 slides are basically everything that they had in the video, but slowing it down a little bit and putting it on text. And I also want to say that whole idea of like, if these are present, 90% of like relationships fail, or like they're not going to go. I don't know if I agree with them so much about that if these 4 are present in your relationship or marriage, that you should be like, well, we're done. That means it's going to end. Like, I don't necessarily believe in that part, but I do see the value in being able to identify whether these 4 things are happening in your relationship and needing to do something about them, because they can just eat away at the relationship itself. Criticism is different than from complaints. A complaint is you didn't take out the trash. A criticism is you never think about other people, or you're selfish, right? It's an attack on their character. And so the solution they talk about is, they term it the gentle startup. It's using what they call I statements. I feel blank when you do blank because blank. I feel like you don't take me into consideration when you make decisions without me. That one didn't have a because, but you focus on what you're feeling and what the other person did to make you feel that way, as opposed to saying, you made me feel like an idiot, because that can lead to defensiveness, because I didn't make you feel like it. I didn't want to make you feel like an idiot, right? It takes the focus and makes it something else, as opposed to what you want it to be about. You feel hurt. You feel like you're ignored. And that should be the focus of like, what made you do that? What made you feel that way? Contempt is fueled by long simmering negativity. So when we saw that negative sentiment override, that for many years can lead to contempt. It's like criticism, but with this air of like superiority. Like the way you think, the way you do things is so awful. Like, I definitely can do this better than you. And so this one, we really have to go down a few floors to be able to build that culture of appreciation and respect, right? Needing to be able to build some, maybe even trust and commitment again from this, because contempt really can tear out that foundation of the relationship. The third one is defensiveness. I think we all can get defensive. It's natural that when you feel attacked, you want to attack back. And so, right, defensiveness of trying to come up with an excuse or why a situation turned out why it did, right? We feel unjustly accused. And then sometimes we turn it on the other person. We want to blame them. So the solution to defensiveness is swallowing a bit of the pride and being able to take responsibility for what we can. This isn't take responsibility for the things you didn't do, but you want to take responsibility for the things that you actually can recognize that you had a hand in, right? I shouldn't have used that tone with you. A lot of times this happens to me when I get hangry, angry, is that I get very short. And right, I think if my wife brings that up to me, I can be defensive about it and just say, well, you did this and you did that. And sometimes I need to take responsibility and say, yeah, you're right. I am hungry and I get irritable and I'm taking it out on you. I'm sorry. Maybe I should start carrying Snickers with me. Stonewalling. This is something that happens. Some people's might be their way of coping is to shut down. I'm going to withdraw. I'm not going to respond to you at all. I'm just going to stare forward at the TV. I'm just going to look at my phone because I can't deal with this. If I try to say anything, I get attacked. I can't, so I'm just going to shut down. And so that's what that feeling flooded ends up being. I'm just going to shut it all down. And so the solution to this is take a break, stop the discussion, and do something. Self-soothe is mainly basically just take care of yourself. Try to bring your emotions back down so you can talk about this again. I think what's important about this is because some people will think, well, then does that mean that's just pushing it under the rug? You're not going to talk about it again. How do I know you're going to bring it up? The important thing to do with this is try to figure out a timeline to come back. Can we talk about this in the morning? Can we talk about this after we've eaten something? After I've spent like 20 minutes doing something? All right, this can be flexible. We can sort of add things of what we need to happen in this. And then so, right, if you're feeling attacked, feeling criticized, this is when you can go back to those I statements we talked about. This is a different, in terms of conflict, this is more about problem solving. So if there is an issue that needs to get worked out, how do you do this effectively? This isn't necessarily a floor of the house, sort of part of conflict resolution. And so one skill is called soften your startup. You can use I instead of you. And this is sort of what an I statement sort of gets at, is that you focus on your feeling and what you need as opposed to what the other person is doing in their intent. Trying to describe things without judgment, describe it as it's happening, more factual. And here's just an example of what you could try to say to soften up your startup. This one's assuming that anytime you bring up something, the other person feels like they're being criticized, is being able to say to them, I'm not trying to criticize you. I just want to be able to give you feedback or talk about something that's been bothering me. I'm not trying to put you down. That's not what I'm trying to do. And the important part is, let's talk about what you do. I really do care about you. I love you a lot. I'm just trying to talk about something that's difficult. That's a soft startup as opposed to Why didn't you take up the trash? Why didn't you do this? De-escalation and repair. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take a break. We just sort of talked about this. In the moment, if you're realizing the other person is getting pretty heated, starting to say not so nice things, but you can say things like, please say that nicer. That felt like an insult. I don't feel like you're understanding me. And then in the repair part, repair is very important when it comes to conflict, because if you constantly have the conflict with no resolution, no taking ownership of things, then you build up some of that resentment. So, sorry, let me try again. I really messed up. I want to say this better. I think this is a really good one. I want to say this better in a better way, but I don't know how. Sort of opens up being able to say something in the other person's mind. When I hear that, it's like, okay, I need to try to give them the benefit of the doubt right now. Even though it might sound really bad, they don't want to hurt me, but they just don't know a better way to say it. And then the last one would be just trying to compromise. And a way to do that is using this simple drawing of two circles in each other. One circle talks about what you can be flexible on, and the inner one would be what you can't be flexible with, so what you're inflexible on. And so you use this to be able to talk about and ask and understand the other person, right? Why is this important to you that it's inflexible? What goals do we have in common, and how do we, maybe can we even come up with a temporary compromise? Okay, I think we have about 15 minutes, 17 minutes left. 2 more floors, make life dreams come true. These are the reason, I think the reason why this and create shared meanings comes last is you can't really talk about dreams. You can't come up with shared meanings if you're fighting a lot, if you don't have that fondness, if you don't really have a friendship, if the trust and commitment aren't there, right? These are the things in the attic, the things that are the last to try to go for. And so this is, if we're talking about retirement today, it's the dreams coming true is what dreams do you have? What dreams do you each have for your time in retirement? How do you guys make that happen? Does one need to happen before the other? Can they both happen at the same time? What have you always wanted to do? And then creating shared meaning. This inherently doesn't necessarily have to do with retirement, but it's about what's the meaning you attach to things in your life and in your relationship. It's about routine as a family, as a couple. What do these things mean? Is it like having dinner together is really important? I would say, especially for in retirement, close to retirement, if you've been in a relationship for a long time, it can mean writing down the story of your relationship. It can read of your marriage. It could be coming up with what kind of legacy you want to leave behind, and maybe also coming up with a routine with one another. We want to be able to wake up at the same time. We want to wake up at different times. I want to have coffee together. Let's have breakfast. We can all go separate for lunch, and then I'd always want to have dinner with you, right? There's different meanings around the different connection points you can have with one another. And so, I mean, every relationship is different. Every relationship is really a cross-cultural experience because no two couples are the same. No people in the relationship are the same. And so, especially now, going into a period like retirement or being in this period, it's trying to understand and get to know the person that you're with, and trying to figure out what matters to this person now. What matters to me now? Maybe some of this is you actually need to get to know yourself a little bit more. So that's all the content for today. I know it was probably a lot. I think even for me, I'm like, oh, that's a lot of stuff. So what I tried to do today is the first part was really trying to find a purpose and routine in retirement. Things change. Not working changes a lot of things. And so trying to take what you got from your job and trying to get some facet of that in retirement is going to be important to make you feel fulfilled in this next part of your life. And retirement will change your relationship because it can highlight the differences that have been there, or the things that have been ignored for so long because life got really busy. And just to be aware that it could be rocky, it may not be. If it's not rocky, then great, right? Then this presentation isn't really as needed. And then so I really use the Gottmans, the Sound Relationship House, because I just like the visual. I like how they structure things and it makes sense. And you're carpenters, right? It's a house. Inherently makes sense. And so I'll send out a picture of it. I'll send out a PDF of it, just if you want to review it or look at it again. And then, so what are maybe some next steps for you guys is big thing. I would want you to just start creating a vision for what you want your retirement to look like. What does it look like on a day-to-day, a month, a year's? Like, what do you put those big things down of what you want it to look like? I would say try something new. I would say if therapy is something that you haven't done before and you're just wondering like, well, maybe this could help us. Our relationship may not be that bad, but let's go try it. Like, it doesn't have to be something you do when things are really bad. Oftentimes, I would say is you should probably try therapy before things get bad, because when it's really bad, a lot of times it might be too late, or there's just a lot more things that could have been fixed much earlier if we had gotten the help than later. And then maybe use that Sound Relationship House to evaluate what part of your relationship needs remodeling. Like, what do we need to work on? What do we need to sort of take apart and sort of go back to and revisit? Because to be honest, I don't know if I know you as well as we did when we first met, or when in the first few years of our relationship. So there's no harm in doing that, and don't feel bad that you may need to do that. Upcoming webinars. I'm going to do one on depression in June. Here's the information there. I'm sure you're going to get an email about these later. And this one in September. So the depression one's going to be virtual again. And I'm excited for the September one because that one's going to be in person. And we're going to try to do food because it's around dinner time. I hope we can do food. Oh, there's some chat. Let me finish. So that one, so what is understanding emotional bonds in relationship? That one's going to really be focused on attachment theory and how that plays out in relationships. How our early sort of connections with our parents or lack of connection affects our relationships now. So really can apply to every kind of relationship we have. And just a plug for the clinic. Remember, these are all the things that we offer here. I'm here Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 8 to 4:30. Tuesday's my late day. I'm here till 7. I put 6:30 because that's when the last appointment will end. There's our website, the phone number to schedule, and I forget what I put this QR code for. Maybe that's to the app. Oh, I think that's to the website, maybe. I think that's the website. I'm not the only one here. Well, I am the only one here, but I'm not the only one that's available to you. You have these 5 different sites you can go to. Northbrook, great. You guys can read all these. Each one of these sites has a therapist at it. And so if you find that my times aren't working, everyone here also does virtual. So you can do that too. Lyra is it's an online platform that you have access to. You get 12 free therapy sessions. You can do psychiatry as well if you're looking for medications. I actually don't prescribe medications. But you can go to a psychiatrist through this, or you can come see any of the providers at any of the clinics, depending on how severe your needs are. And so they have a specific site for carpenters, a specific phone number and email that if you call or you email them, they'll get back to you very quickly. Any questions? We've got 8 minutes. I'm going to stop sharing right now. Well, thank you all for coming. I hope this was helpful in some way. I know I'm not retired, but I think some of this can be helpful for any kind of relationship, regardless if you're retired or not. So I'll wait a few minutes. If people want questions or things they want to revisit or advice on something, go ahead. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just to confirm, you are going to send us all the slides?
I'm going to send it in a PDF where like you can just see what's on each slide. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Let me actually stop the recording if that's in case people find that as don't want their information shared.